I'm Caroline Hyde. This is the best of Bloomberg Technology, where we bring you all our top interviews from this week in tech. Coming up, the WikiLeaks data trove. The organization releases thousands of documents reportedly from the cyber espionage playbook of the CIA. Plus, the future of H-1B. The Trump administration slams the brakes on one of tech's most critical visa programs for fast-tracking overseas talent. And Google steps up its cloud business and sticks it to a major rival. We've got all the highlights from this week's Google Next conference. First to our lead. This week, WikiLeaks published thousands of documents reportedly taken from the CIA that expose a massive toolkit of cyber spying techniques. Among the disclosures, CIA hackers had the ability to access information from what were believed to be secure messaging apps, including WhatsApp, Telegram, and Signal. They can also reportedly run malware on Microsoft Windows and can tap into Samsung smart TVs for surveillance. Now, we don't know how WikiLeaks got its hands on the material, and according to CNN, a federal criminal investigation has been opened. On Thursday, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange spoke in a webcast saying he will work with technology companies to close those gaps identified.
Hearing these calls from some of the manufacturers, we have decided to work with them to give them some exclusive access to the additional technical details we have so that fixes can be developed and pushed out so people can be secured.
Assange went on to say the disclosures show that the CIA has, quote, lost control of its entire cyber weapons arsenal. We dove into the developing story on Bloomberg Technology. Take a listen.
Today, we've been getting statements. Today, they took a stab at Julian Assange, saying, quote, he's not really known as a bastion of integrity. And so that was pretty interesting. We've also heard from them saying that the American public should be deeply troubled by any kind of leaks that WikiLeaks may be putting out there that could, compromise U.S. intelligence and protecting the American people. So while they've not quite, confirmed anything with the leaks or these disclosures we're saying, they have come out very publicly to us, telling us directly that, they don't stand for any kind of anything that would compromise U.S. ability to gather information. But they've also tried to make clear that they're not allowed to do electronic surveillance on U.S. soil. So you sort of see them pushing back at some of the accusations that we've been hearing from these disclosures over the last couple of days.
And talking of accusations we've been hearing, Julian Assange himself weighed in more on the webcast. I just want to have a hear of what he really felt was a Trojan horse from the CIA. Have a listen.
The CIA developed a giant arsenal, what appears to be the largest arsenal of Trojans and viruses in the world that attacks most of the systems that journalists, people in government, politicians, CEOs, and average people use, didn't secure it, lost control of it, and then appears to have covered up that fact.
Eric, accused of losing control, then covering up the facts. How dangerous could it be if the CIA did indeed leave these vulnerabilities open for others to find as well?
Well, what we're saying is vulnerabilities, but the real name for these things is weapons. It's one thing to release the tools if you're WikiLeaks, but when you release the actual vulnerabilities, those can be weaponized because we've seen that within 24 hours of discovering a new vulnerability, especially if it's spread mass around the world, then attackers will use that vulnerability. And 99% of the major breaches that have happened because of an unpatched vulnerability. So if WikiLeaks actually wants to be responsible for once, then they need to take great care in how they release these vulnerabilities.
Nafisa, in fact, the FBI are now looking into how WikiLeaks came across this sort of information.
Right. WikiLeaks has told us that this trove of code and malware and viruses and 0 days or security vulnerabilities was circulating for a long time among government hackers and contractors. And they say one of those people handed that content over to WikiLeaks. So the question is, who would that have been? If the FBI and internally CIA is going to be making lists of who those people are and trying to find who that one, person was that turned over this content. So that's something we're going to have to wait and see if this is going to be happening, kind of, investigations into this.
And Eric, I've got to put to you, of course, this is a strained relationship we've seen between the tech giants and Washington at times. I mean, our minds go back to San Bernardino shooting and the fact that they don't like to allow backdoors into their encryption. How do you think this puts the onus on the relationship going forward?
I think that government needs to make some very strong national security decisions about what they need to provide to tech companies. Here, if indeed the CIA did lose this information and they knew that it had proliferated and certain hackers were using it, I would have liked to see an earlier disclosure and maybe work with tech companies to help strengthen our defense, because that is security. Protecting the people here in the U.S. Is national security, especially something so important as a cell phone and our data, which is where we put everything that we do and say these days.
Still ahead, Alphabet ups its cloud game, adding new customers and partners. But will it be enough to catch up to cloud leaders Amazon and Microsoft? Plus, Blue Origin's reusable rocket New Glenn is expected to debut before the end of the decade, and founder Jeff Bezos expands on that vision. This is Bloomberg.
My vision for Blue Origin, the long-term vision, is millions of people living and working in space. We need a spacefaring civilization for a whole bunch of reasons, and that's the vision.
Disney CEO Bob Iger is staying put on a panel of CEOs who advised President Trump on economic matters. During a company shareholders meeting on Wednesday, an activist requested Iger leave the panel, saying his participation suggests he supports Trump's policies. Iger disagreed with the activist's views. Take a listen.
I did not believe, nor do I believe, that my membership in that group in any way endorses or supports any specific policy of the president or his administration. I think it's actually a privileged opportunity to have a voice in the room.
Speaking of President Trump, he met with Lorraine Powell Jobs at the White House Wednesday to discuss immigration policy. Powell Jobs is the widow of Apple co-founder Steve Jobs. Critics of Trump's immigration policies have often cited Steve Jobs as an example of how the U.S. has benefited from welcoming foreigners, as Jobs' biological father was a Syrian immigrant. Through her philanthropic organization, Powell Jobs has supported immigrants and refugees affected by Trump's executive orders. Now to Google. It sees reliability as a competitive advantage over cloud computing leaders Microsoft and Amazon Web Services, which of course suffered its outage last week. At a company conference on Wednesday, Google Cloud Chief Diane Greene cited data from Cloud Harmony that ranked Google ahead of those companies as the most reliable cloud provider in 2016. Greene, while cracking a joke at Amazon's expense, went on to say Google Cloud is also attracting clients such as eBay and Verizon through a broad portfolio of products focused on security. In a speech later that day, CEO Sundar Pichai said he sees cloud computing evolving into one of the company's core products, such as search advertising. Take a listen.
To me, Google Cloud is a natural extension of our mission to make information accessible and useful. We're just doing it for businesses. It means increasing the availability and lowering the cost of data storage and computing resources.
We also sat down with the chief scientist of artificial intelligence of Google Cloud, Fei-Fei Li, asking her about the transformation of machine learning in cloud technology.
I think it's going to be tremendous. I think this is not only just cost saving because of the machine intelligence and data analytics. It's going to open up new businesses. For example, in financial services, suddenly we can have a better service in terms of banking, personalized banking, or in retail, we can have the new ways of delivering products to customers. So it's AI and machine learning is huge. I deeply believe this is the driving force of a transformative time for our industries and enterprises.
Is this why you went into business? You left academia to come into Google? What attracted you to this, to Alphabet in particular?
So first of all, I didn't leave academia. I'm on leave from Stanford, and which is a sabbatical. And I think you're totally right. I've been a technologist for almost 20 years, and I've been working in the field of AI and machine learning, and I watched this field grow from a niche, lofty academic field into this major force of our society and the future of our business. And I want to participate and contribute in this transformation. And I thought hard about what can AI and machine learning contribute. And the key word for me is to democratize this technology. I don't want this technology to be in the hands of only a privileged few. So cloud is the best vehicle to democratize AI. It delivers the power of this technology to so many people and so many businesses.
As machine learning and AI really show what they can do, the question of ethics comes into machine learning as well. Is that something that you think businesses and academia is keeping a pace of?
I think this is an important topic that we should invite the whole society to participate. Every time there is a new technology transformation in our human civilization, that technology becomes a force of change in the way that we live, we work, we conduct our businesses, we do regulations, we create policies. This is inevitable. But the important thing is that all parts of the society participate in this discussion, and whether as an educator or as a technologist, I care deeply about this.
You talk of democratization, you talk of a cucumber farmer in Japan using Google Cloud. Is the prices going to continue to drop, do you think? Will the competition in the market as well help continue that particular trajectory?
So, Carolyn, I'm not a business person, so I'm not going to talk about price because I don't think I have many things sensible to say. But what I want to talk about is that the competition is not just going to be price, it's going to be the products we offer, it's going to be what we can give to the customers that they need. And I know, and we know, the customers are going to need powerful, easy to use AI and machine learning tools, and that's what I will be focusing on.
How do you think Google Cloud and the AI machine learning element of that is better than the rest?
So we need to look at Google as a company. Google as a company has the deepest bench in terms of AI talents and AI technology. Before I joined Google, I'm an academia, and I know that some of my best students go to Google, and I know that my Google colleagues, the engineers, the researchers, produce some of the most phenomenal work in machine learning and AI. If you look at what Google Brain is doing, the TensorFlow libraries, the work they've been doing in healthcare, they're winning challenges in AI competitions. We look at our colleagues in DeepMind, the work of AlphaGo, and many things. So I think Google is unmatched in its ability of AI technology and machine learning technology.
That clearly what continues to attract people such as yourself. I've got to ask you about the ribbon, of course, that you're wearing right now. It is International Women's Day. I look around us, and it's not a particularly filled of females.
You're
here.
being charitable.
You talked about AI being a sea of dudes. Is that still the case?
It is. I think we should acknowledge that the diversity issue in AI and STEM is continue to be an issue. It's not just gender diversity, there is other diversity. Eventually it's the diversity of thoughts.
Now coming up, WikiLeaks exposes alleged CIA spying techniques, and Samsung smart TVs are getting some unwanted attention. More on the South Korean giant's latest debacle. That's next. Plus, Jeff Bezos' space colonization dream gets its first paying customer. This is Bloomberg. Hyperloop One is making waves in Nevada. The company has revealed the first images of the DevLoop. This is the first full-scale test track in the Nevada desert. The goal is to get a test run in the first half of this year, using the DevLoop as a proof of concept to prepare for the construction of its first commercial installation. Hyperloop One will focus on ferrying goods and eventually hopes to transport passengers at high speeds. And Blue Origin saw a lot of action this week. On Monday, Blue Origin founder Jeff Bezos tweeted out pictures of the first of 7 engines for the giant reusable New Glenn rocket. One day later, Bezos announced the rocket's first paying customer. Blue Origin has signed satellite operator Eutelsat as its first client. This as the company prepares to launch more powerful rockets early in the next decade. Bezos announced the partnership at the Satellite 2017 conference in Washington and invited Eutelsat's CEO on stage.
A few months ago, we started approaching customers, and Eutelsat was very interested, and right away, and it's really a great partnership, as we're saying, because they've done so many new vehicles in the past, and so we couldn't hope for a better first partner because they're going to be able to help.
Bloomberg's Dana Hull was at the Satellite 2017 conference and joined us from Washington.
It's a huge step for Blue Origin as a company. I mean, this is a space exploration company that has really lived on Jeff Bezos' dream, and now they actually have some revenue in the forms of a paying customer. And it's notable that this announcement was made at Satellite 2017. This is the satellite industry's premier networking and conference event. So, this is probably the first of what will likely be more paying clients in the future.
I believe Eutelsat's already been a customer potentially of SpaceX. How does SpaceX and Virgin Galactic compare to where Blue Origin is right now?
Right, so I think what we're seeing in the space industry as a whole is the continual development and improvement of new and more powerful rockets that are capable of launching satellites to geostationary orbit, which is, very far away. And so New Glenn is the rocket that Blue Origin is working on. They say that their launch contract with Eutelsat is for 2021, so it's still a couple of years out. But, New Glenn is going to be a very powerful rocket, on the scope of which we just haven't seen in this country for quite some time. And I think you're seeing Bezos kind of expand beyond space tourism to commercial paying customers.
I mean, quite phenomenal leaps being made. There's a great story out on the Bloomberg saying about taxpayers and potentially how much they might be on the hook the next time a space mission by SpaceX or indeed Orbital, ATK or private companies actually fail. Is this something that you think is becoming known by the general public, or is this something that private companies should be having to look to themselves?
Well, I think that, the launch industry as an industry is very familiar with mishaps. And whenever a rocket explodes on a launch pad or shortly after flight, it's a setback for the industry as a whole because images of burning rockets don't do anyone any good. I think the whole insurance question is a really interesting one. Oftentimes there's dual insurance or, the way that the insurance deals are structured tends to be different for each provider. But what you're going to see going forward is bigger, heavier, more powerful rockets capable of launching heavier and grander payloads. And, now if you're a satellite company, you have more options. You can go on SpaceX, you can go on Arianespace, eventually you'll be able to go on Blue Origin. And so as for the satellite industry, this is great for them because they have more options and there's more competition, which ultimately will lower the cost for everyone. Great
for satellite. What about great for the consumer who is desperate to get into space? Virgin Galactic ticket holders have been pushed back and pushed back. Do you have any time frames, particularly for what Blue Origin is promising?
Well, they're talking about taking tourists to the edge of space for a few minutes of weightlessness and then bringing them back. I don't know what the timeline for that is, but I think it's within the next couple of years. And of course, they've kind of leaned on what they've learned from the test flights of New Shepard to help develop New Glenn, which is the new rocket that they're talking about.
And Dana, just remind us of what Jeff Bezos' grand view here. We know that Elon Musk is a visionary who potentially looks at us living outside into space. What does Jeff Bezos hope to achieve?
I mean, they're similar guys in that they are both, tech billionaires who made their fortunes in the internet and then immediately plowed those fortunes into private space companies. Bezos started Blue Origin 15 years ago with the millions that he earned as Amazon CEO, and they were relatively quiet until recently. But his vision is similar in that he wants to have millions of people living and working in space.
That was Bloomberg's Dana Hull in Washington. And it's more headaches for Samsung. As we mentioned, according to documents released by WikiLeaks, Samsung smart TVs could be used to spy on their users. The claim is that Samsung smart TVs have a microphone designed to take voice commands, which can pick up and transmit information while the device appears to be switched off. Samsung says it's aware of the WikiLeaks report and is urgently looking into the matter. The South Korean tech giant is already hurting from other recent debacles. Most recently, the de facto head JY Lee preparing to stand trial for charges of bribery and embezzlement. Bloomberg's Peter Elstrom joined us live from Tokyo.
There were many computing devices that were mentioned in that report from WikiLeaks, from Apple phones to Android phones. But this is sort of the last thing that Samsung needs right now. They're trying to get back on track, of course, after the troubles with the Note 7 smartphone that was bursting into flame last year. They're poised to introduce the next smartphone, and so they don't need any more hits to their brand name at this point. As you mentioned, the WikiLeaks documents show that the CIA had been using a program called Weeping Angel to be able to convert these smart TVs into something that could look like it was turned off, but it would actually be monitoring what was going on in the room. So, yeah, not a good thing for them.
Not a good thing when it's a product element, and also, meanwhile, at the helm of the entire company, JY Lee going in to face court once again. Explain to us just how much the investigation into the executives of Samsung seems to have broadened out.
That's right. Today in Asia, where it's Thursday, these will be the preliminary hearings for the trial. It's not clear at this point whether JY Lee himself is going to appear, but the attorneys from both sides will appear, and they'll lay out the time frame for the trial. One thing that's sort of striking about this investigation is how quickly it's moving at this point. The special prosecutor was set up and was tasked with investigating these allegations of trading favors at the highest level of government and business, and he was only given about 90 days to do that, which is very, very quick by international standards. Certainly when you look at some of the big scandals in the U.S., that's lightning fast. He asked for an extension, a 30-day investigation, and the same administration of the president who's been impeached denied him the extra 30 days to keep digging. They also won't let him into the president's residence to be able to continue the investigation. So he's kind of playing a very quick game right now, and now the trial is going to begin, and that's going to move pretty quickly too.
How is Asia responding? I mean, the investor base doesn't seem to be. We've seen Samsung near all-time highs when you're looking at the share price. But is there concern that indeed JY Lee could end up in prison? What does that mean for the business?
Well, it is a high hurdle to prove that he personally was involved in some of these payments. Now, Samsung has denied any sort of wrongdoing here. They've said that they did give tens of millions of dollars in payments to this confidant of the president, Park, but they've said that was not in exchange for payment. So there's a high hurdle for the lawyer, the prosecutor in this case, to be able to actually prove that JY Lee himself was involved in this. As you mentioned, the Samsung business has been continuing quite strong. The shares are near an all-time high at this point. The chips business and the display businesses in particular have been doing quite well. So that's kind of bolstered them, and now they're going to come out with this new smartphone at the end of the month. So we'll see how that plays out.
That was Peter Elstrom, Bloomberg's managing editor of Asia Technology in Tokyo. Coming up, President Trump's latest executive order puts the brakes on H-1B visas. What's this mean for Silicon Valley attracting the top tech talent? And a reminder that all episodes of Bloomberg Technology are now live streaming on Twitter. Check us out. It's at Bloomberg Tech TV, weekdays at 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to the best of Bloomberg Technology. I'm Caroline Hyde. This week, President Trump took a second crack at his controversial travel ban. The new executive order replaces the original and restricts entry into the U.S. for people from 6 predominantly Muslim countries. Iraq was removed from the first list, and the language was amended to make clear that visa and green card holders and dual citizens will not be denied entry. The announcement is more onerous in certain areas, though, with the suspension of the 15-day premium processing program to fast-track applicants of H-1B visas, a process that Silicon Valley tech firms use to find the best and brightest talent. We caught up with Michael Solomon, founder of 10X Management, a recruitment firm that hires for the likes of Google and eBay.
I believe what we're really looking for right now is the beginning of a dismantling of this program, and I think that that's going to really work very counter to the administration's goals, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, we discussed the H-1B visa the last time that you joined this program, and we knew that there are some key issues at the heart of it. Sometimes it is being misused by certain companies. How could it be improved rather than dismantled, as you're at the moment worried about?
I believe one of the things that we talked about the last time I was here is the idea that we can increase the threshold for hiring. So rather than a $60,000 minimum, move that to $120,000. The companies who need to bring in foreign talent because they can't get people here can easily afford to pay twice what they're paying now. They can afford to pay much higher expedited fees. That's good for the government. That's good for the economy. It will not take away jobs from people here, because if people here are qualified for those jobs at lower prices, they'll take them. And the problem with what's being proposed now is as you reduce the number of tech talent that come in, all you're going to do is increase the pricing for those who are here. It's not going to create a whole lot of new jobs.
How have some of your clients been reacting to this? Have they been trying to find talent ahead of any sort of cutback? I mean, we know that it starts at the beginning of April when they're allowed their new allotment of the amount of people coming in on H-1B visas, but how are they trying to maneuver?
I think everybody's sort of frozen right now. We've seen the beginning of this administration make a lot of very bold moves and then retracting from them. And I believe what we're observing right now is everybody trying to understand what the changes are, how quickly they're going to roll out, and how it's going to impact them. And the announcements that have just been made are being digested as we speak, and I think we'll see what the tactics are. The truth is, for a lot of companies that were relying on those expedited visas, they're going to have a very serious shortfall, and they're going to have to deal with the fact that they're going to have to find local talent, and it may not be the right talent for a period of time, or what may be worse is they may move those roles to offshore completely, in which case we're all losing out.
Are you already starting to see that or hear that being voiced by clients?
It's sort of a simple equation. When you have a job that needs to get done and you can't find people here to do it, and you can't bring people here to do it, you're going to go get it done somewhere else. And
where are the most likely areas, do you think? There was talk of Canada. Which countries do you think are being looked at and eyed up the most?
I mean, I think that, India sort of comes to mind first because they have a very large population of educated people. But I hear, especially as you look in the data science realm and the machine learning, more about Eastern Europe and Russia in particular. But there's other places in Eastern Europe that have large swaths of tech talent, and we're going to just see these jobs and the tax base going other places because somebody's got to do the work.
Have you seen openings piling up? Is the talent crunch already upon us? You said that at the moment we've sort of got a freeze going on, but are you already seeing it being demonstrated?
I mean, I believe the talent crunch has existed for years and is going to continue to exist for years. I haven't seen something happen in the last few months that makes it much worse, but I do think we're going to see, as the effects of this policy come into play, we're going to see rising prices. That's the first thing we're going to see, is companies are going to pay more for jobs that they were paying less for prior.
Cost base going higher. Michael Solomon, do stick with us, because another story that we're watching, amidst falling morale, Uber employees are starting to explore exits from the company. And that's according to a report by the Financial Times. Last week, 2 executives resigned from the ride-hailing app, and the company continues to draw scrutiny of its every move. How does being under such a microscope impact employees? Michael Solomon, let's bring you back, founder of 10X Management. I want your take on this, because is there an Uber exodus going on at the moment? Are you seeing a pool of talent potentially coming from that business?
I think we're going to see some big changes as a result of what's going on at Uber. There's a couple of things that you have to note. When a company has a misstep, everybody can be forgiving, everybody can acknowledge that all companies and management make mistakes. When you have a second misstep, there are more people who start to question, was this a one-time anomaly? Is this a trend? Is this really a failing of management? And then when you have a third and a fourth misstep all within a 2-week period, you're going to see fallout from that. You're going to see people leaving. You're going to see lots of discussion about management and culture changes. and you're going to see people ready to go because there's no shortage of jobs for these people.
Does it still look like a good place to have worked, do you think? Is it putting people off applying for jobs there? And indeed, when people are leaving, do they want to brag that they were there?
Funny you should ask that. We have a returning client to us who has Uber in his experience as somebody who's done work for in the past, and we had a very long discussion about whether that's something we should list right now. I will say that when we started the discussion 2 weeks ago, it was an absolute yes, with me saying very clearly this is a big, strong company, and the fact that you've done work for them is a good thing, and no one's going to hold you responsible for mistakes that management made. But as the stories of the last 2 weeks have continued to unfold, and it seems like foible after foible, you start to question that. I still think it's worthwhile to list it as a company. It's an amazing platform. It's an amazing piece of technology. If you help build that technology, I hope you're proud of it. But from a cultural standpoint and from a management standpoint, I think that's a hard line to walk.
Coming up, our exclusive conversation with Udacity and Google X founder Sebastian Trun. We get his take on the latest in automated driving. And we speak to one of the biggest peer-to-peer lenders in the United Kingdom, Funding Circle, how the company is faring after Brexit and what's ahead for the US business. That's next. This is Bloomberg. Now, Sebastian Trun is known to be one of the most innovative minds in Silicon Valley. A research professor at Stanford University, former Google fellow, and of course, founder of Google X, where he led various projects like the autonomous car and Google Glass. Now, he's moved on to found Udacity, the online education tech startup that offers courses teaching skills for specialized jobs in areas like self-driving cars. The company just announced 2 new nano degree programs in robotics and digital marketing, along with 19 new hiring partnerships. We caught up with Sebastian Trun and asked, well, how these new partnerships will help students land jobs at companies like Facebook and Google in the future.
We have companies as far ranging from Google X all the way to iRobot and many others. And these are tech companies. These are Silicon Valley type tech companies that really want the latest and best talent. There's a huge gap in the world between the talent that exists today and the talent that companies want. And what Udacity does is it gives every person a chance to upskill themselves and get the right talent so they can find a job.
The timing here is fascinating, Sebastian, because it was just yesterday that we were discussing the executive order put in by Donald Trump, which will be making it harder for individuals to get H-1B visas. This is something that's depended on by Silicon Valley in particular to get the right sort of talent. Can talent be fostered within the United States through nano degrees such as yourself?
Absolutely, yes. We have over 330 million people. There's amazing talent in this country. And while we have the world's best university system, it's not available for everybody. What Udacity does is it makes education accessible, and it really gives people the type of skills that are really brand new, bleeding edge. We have, for example, a self-driving car nano degree. Udacity trains more self-driving car engineers than all universities combined at this point. And we have companies like Mercedes and Waymo and Tesla and many others who then end up hiring those graduates.
How much has potentially there been a worry, a concern? A lot of these technology degrees and new schools, technology schools that have been cropping up, haven't always had the employees, the employee and indeed the amount of employment that many had hoped. Has that tarnished Udacity as well, or do you think people understand that the rates at which you can manage to get these sorts of people into the workforce and quickly?
Well, given our current growth rate, I believe our students trust us. We are working really, really, really hard to keep our costs down and get people jobs. And that's why we make things like money back guarantees and so on, and promise students their tuition back if they can't find a job. So we hold ourselves accountable. The difference between us and everybody else is we derive our content directly from those companies, end up hiring those students. We go to top companies like Amazon and Facebook and ask them, what would it take for you to hire a person? And then they say, well, the following 8 projects is what we need to prove proficiency, and that becomes our curriculum.
Talk to me about the rest of the world then. Before, we have seen tech talent coming to Silicon Valley, particularly from India, particularly from China and other parts of the world, Europe. Are those people now going to be remaining and creating jobs and moving into companies at home now if the visa applications become harder, if moving to the United States becomes less palatable?
I can tell you, I talk a lot about Silicon Valley and the type of jobs here, but the same talent is needed around the world. Every company now is a mobile company because of Android and iOS. Every company now is a machine learning and big data company because there's so much data out there, and companies are beginning to realize they have to use the data. So our students find jobs at Flipkart, at Didi in China, another partner of ours, and many other places. We have, last year we opened, I'm very proud of this, we opened an office in Saudi Arabia. So in Saudi Arabia, it turns out women are not allowed to drive. So they're all online, they all speak English, and we are able to empower women in Saudi Arabia in a way that's never happened before.
Udacity, from a global perspective, you're talking about Saudi Arabia. Are there any areas of the globe you're not yet that you'd like to be?
Oh my God, I want to be in every household, and I would love to make it entirely free if I could survive as a company. I'd love to get many more scholarships to students. We have over 8,000 scholarships at this point. The reason is there's a huge inequity in the world. Like if you take, say, Africa, the Middle East, you put in Indonesia, maybe India, and South America, you have more than half the world's population. You won't even find a single top 100 university. That doesn't mean those people are all dumb and don't deserve education. It just means they don't get it. And what we can do, and we are doing, is bringing great education to all those people as well.
You've announced some really interesting competitions, for example, with Didi over in China in particular. Where do you think Silicon Valley needs to be worried about right now in terms of competition, in terms of the talent of technologists and indeed technology companies?
Well, China has done an extraordinary job in tech. And if you look at the biggest tech companies, 4 out of 10 are actually Chinese at this point. None are European, where I'm from, unfortunately. But I think Silicon Valley will remain the source of like crazy disruptive innovation. I think the people that think new things and build something completely out of the box tend to eventually come here and work with us and others. I've seen China doing a phenomenally great job, in part because China is very large. It's like 4 times as big as the United States. As a result, the market is very large. And that's why there's some really great Chinese companies that do, by lo and behold, I think what American companies did first.
So will US always be the #1 market for you?
Oh boy, I wish I had a prophet in my family to understand where the world is going. But I love the United States. I'm a by choice a citizen. I love what we do here. And I love the fact that you can be an entrepreneur and really invent new things here and get away with it, which is great. Like we are, in some sense, the University of Silicon Valley now. We're reinventing what a university should be. And we can just do this, which is really, really great.
Do you think that's a risk under the new administration?
I'm still in my wait and see mode. Obviously, there's many things to be said on both sides, but I think everybody, including the president, has the good of this country at heart. And everybody that I talked to, yesterday I spent half a day with Governor Kasich, for example, really, really worry about how can we take the great American workers and make them fit for 21st century technology. So actually, I think Udacity is Silicon Valley's response in part to this nation to take people along, to take everybody along and leave nobody behind.
That was Udacity founder Sebastian Thrun. This week, we've been focusing in on the future of digital lending, with the peer-to-peer lending space picking up steam globally. We kick things off on Monday with some of China's regulatory hurdles. Then we turn to UK and US with Funding Circle. The London-based peer-to-peer lending platform operates in 4 countries, including the UK, US, as well as Germany and the Netherlands. Founding Circle co-founder and US Managing Director Sam Hodges joined us for more.
There are some big differences between the US and the UK market, but actually the starting point is the end borrower, the customer we're really trying to serve is actually quite similar. It's an established small business owner who's looking for expansion capital. That being said, the US market's obviously much bigger, it's more fragmented, the regulatory schema is a bit different from the UK, but overall I think a lot of the principles that we've learned well in our UK and also our European business also apply well here in the States.
What about the growth targets for origination of loans here in the United States? Can you paint us a picture of where it goes?
Absolutely. So we've grown the business precipitously over the last couple of years, and this year anticipate being able to grow our origination volume somewhere between 70 and 85%. That on back of strong performance in 2016. We continue to see just a huge opportunity to serve small business customers all over the States, and we're just very focused on delivering a high quality experience for all of them.
What about the credit problems in the loan book that struck funding circle in the US in 2016. You had to stop making new loans. How's the credit scoring changed for Funding Circle?
So we actually grew our business through 2016. Certainly there are pockets of 2015 loans that underperformed our expectations a bit, but actually going into 2016 and certainly now in 2017, we feel really positively about the overall credit performance. Our 2016 book is holding up well from a delinquency perspective, and I think our institutional as well as our individual investors are quite happy with the yields they're getting on the marketplace.
You talk about institutional investors there. Are we seeing a heavier weighting or a similar weighting of institutional investors wanting to be able to buy up the loans here in the US vis-a-vis the United Kingdom?
So we form capital in 3 different ways globally. Here in the States, we have a number of large institutional players. Most recently, actually last week, we announced another $100 million commitment from Community Investment Management, which is an institution focused on social impact and particularly around small business, so we're really excited about that. Beyond that, we also have a fractional marketplace where we have a number of accredited investors, and then we also have a set of our own funds. And over time, what I'd anticipate is you actually see a reasonably even balance across those 3 legs of the liquidity stool, if you will.
Would you ever get a banking license? Would you ever want to make loans on your own balance sheet?
Well, so we are licensed in the U.S., and the way we've approached our regulatory framework is on a state-by-state basis. So we hold a California lending license, we hold licenses in 13 other states, and in other states, as a commercial lender, you don't necessarily need to be licensed, or you can passport your licensing from other areas. So we don't necessarily see a need to get a banking license in the United States. We have a framework that works very well as it is.
Still ahead, the company that's looking to be the Netflix of fitness classes. We focus on the technology of Peloton next. And if you like Bloomberg News, check us out on the radio. You can now listen on the Bloomberg Radio app, Bloomberg.com, and in the US on Sirius XM. This is Bloomberg. Peloton is one company taking advantage of the demand for on-demand everything, with proprietary bicycles and tablets that let users tap into classes from home. But convenience comes at a cost. Bloomberg's Carol Massa has the story.
This may look like your average cycling class, but it's not. And what you can't see in the studio are the hundreds of riders who are joining in from home.
Last one, I need you to be magical. Saddle down.
Peloton is one of many companies disrupting the fitness industry. From Daily Burn to CrossFit to ClassPass, fitness is becoming more about on-demand and all-access. There's an increasing number of workout companies using technology to offer members unlimited streaming workouts that lets users take all kinds of classes from different locations or in the convenience and privacy of their homes. Peloton co-founder and CEO John Foley likens it to people wanting things on their terms, their time, and with more convenience.
Going back to when you and I grew up and there were 13 channels, and at 8 o'clock you had to be there for Magnum PI. Now with Netflix and with all these other video streaming apps, you can watch content and consume content where you are, when you want. So I think fitness is the next frontier of that, and I think Peloton is going to help pioneer it.
Today, some $26 billion is spent annually in the U.S. on fitness. Digital workouts are slowly taking a chunk out of that number. On-demand fitness services jumped to nearly 8% of total spending on workouts last year, up from nearly 5% in 2014. At Peloton alone, sales more than doubled from 2015 to 2016. The company made $170 million in revenues last year, nearly 3 times as much as the year before. Foley, who founded Peloton in 2012, after everyday life got in the way of he and his wife's workouts, hopes 2017 will be the company's first profitable year.
How do you see yourself? Is it an application? Is it fitness equipment? Is it technology?
At our core, we are an innovation company and a technology company, full stop.
Where's the health or the fitness?
Yeah, I mean, certainly we're in the fitness category, and we're the first, I believe, hardcore technology shop to enter the fitness category. We certainly aren't a stationary bike company by any stretch.
Yet Peloton does sell its own stationary bike that lets users tap into live studio classes or a library of 3,000 cycling and other workout offerings at any time of the day in the privacy of their own homes.
How many bike owners do you have?
So we're approaching 100,000 bikes in the market.
Okay.
But
is that globally?
That's effectively globally. We sell domestically, but people have taken them to 26 countries. So we have bikes all over the world, but we right now are focused on selling the bikes in the States.
What's the most usage? Because there's rides where you can be over in Europe riding, or you can be part of a live class, or you can download, there's a whole menu of different types of classes that you can download. I'm just curious, what gets the most use?
Yeah, so interestingly, only 20% of the rides taken are live. I think the live experience is so much more fun because the energy of it's like live music. You're there, and if you know Carol, they'll actually give you a shout out. They'll break the fourth wall, look in the camera, and say, "Carol in Jersey City, it's your 100th ride. You're going to pull us up the next hill," and it's very immersive. You're part of the theatrics and the entertainment for a live class. On demand is 80% of the rides, and what it kind of tells you is that people really care about having their instructor and their time and controlling that environment versus being driven by our schedule of the live rides.
Have your own stationary bike and still want access to Peloton classes at home? There's a Peloton app for that.
You mentioned technology innovation company. Who do you see as your competition? Is it SoulCycle? Is it Flywheel? Is it ClassPass? Is it?
No, we're rooting for the category. We love SoulCycle. We love Barry's Bootcamp. We love Flywheel. We love yoga. We're trying to be good in the fitness category. So to your question, who do we see as our competitors? What keeps me up at night is if Apple or Google or Amazon were to enter our category. Those are the only three companies that I believe have the tech resources and the tech chops to give us a run for our money.
IPO this year?
No.
Because?
We are looking to do a fundraise in the next couple months that would allow us to be as aggressive as we want and take our time considering the public markets.
Next year, maybe?
Maybe.
Maybe. Because I've read something about a $10 billion valuation in 5 years. Is that real?
I would be disappointed if it weren't real. I think that certainly starts to be in the order of magnitude of what we're seeing as the opportunity here. I think that's on the low side of where we see this business going in the next 5 or 10 years.
This April, the monthly subscription service app ClassPass, which grants users access to thousands of different workout classes around the world, plans on rolling out its own video-on-demand feature, joining companies like Daily Burn and Beachbody On Demand, which have been offering streaming since 2015. And while currently only 15% of fitness consumers are working out on demand, Dana Mackey at market research company Mintel doesn't expect it to stay that way.
In 5 or 10 years, we'll definitely see digital fitness trend continues to grow. I think the new entrants to the market will be more in tune with new technologies, including augmented and virtual reality.
I think Americans are living busier and busier lives, so they want things to work into their schedules and work into their locations versus having to go somewhere at somebody else's schedule. I think that's a dated concept.
Now that does it for this edition of Best of Bloomberg Technology. We'll bring you all the latest in tech throughout the week. Be sure to tune in on Wednesday when we'll hear from Vinod Khosla of Khosla Ventures. Remember, all episodes of Bloomberg Technology are now live streaming on Twitter. Check us out. It's at Bloomberg Tech TV weekdays. That's all for now. This is Bloomberg.